Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we're going to share Wendigo horror stories. First story. My son said the neighbor's cat told him she's dead. Mommy, why do things die? I turned to my son from the stove. He sat at the worn-out cream wooden table, his feet dangling towards the tile. Too small to touch the floor. Where did that question come from, honey? I ask, laughing and turning back to the cooking bacon quietly. Pop sizzle. Pop. Mr. Nate's cat, he replied. Pop sizzle. Well, I guess sometimes when someone or something is very old or sick or has been hurt in a way that can't be fixed, they die. That means their body stops working. Death is a natural part of life. I paused. Did something happen with Mr. Nate's cat, Seb? Pop. She told me she's dead. He was good, my boy Sebastian. He used to sleep all through the night. Him, a baby blue blanket my late mom crocheted when she found out I was having a boy, and the baby monitor right next to his crib. I felt like I was blessed to have such a quiet baby. He never fussed or made a mess. Even when he began to speak, he always said, "Yes, ma'am," or "Yes, sir." People would stop and say, "You must be a wonderful mother, teaching your boys such manners at this young age." They'd smile. I'd smile. Sebastian would smile. He was such a good student, too. Always came home with a project or another. I didn't have to ask him to get good grades. He just knew. I think he knew that it was just me and him. His dad split when he was 1. Now, at 7, he had the biggest mind of all the third graders in his class. His teacher called me one day to tell me he'd be the next Einstein. I was so proud. So proud to think that maybe I, a single mom, could have parented the next Einstein. When I think about him now, in this moment, I guess I never should have been a mom. Everything started going downhill when he brought up that cat. Mr. Nate's cat is really scared, Mom. She said it's dark in there. She wants to meet you. I just brushed it off. Laugh. It hadn't even been a few days since he brought this cat up. What was I supposed to do? I tried telling him she couldn't talk. She can't do that. Cats can't speak, right? I thought that I should put an end to it. But how? I finally decided that when Seb was at school, I would go to Nate's house and see what all the fuss was about. Walking up to the door, I didn't think anything was wrong. But the redwood and golden knob taunted me in the faded fall sun. Nate was an older man, late 60s. He'd always been there for me and Seb after Seb's dad left. He called me his surrogate daughter, in a way. His dad died when she was 20. Lila. Car accident. Nate didn't like to talk about it. It definitely ate him up inside. I just didn't think it was my place to ask. Knock. Knock. No answer. Knock. Knock. No answer. The door creaked open. That was unlike him. Nate never kept his door unlocked because of his time in the army. He didn't like the thought of anyone, random, barging into his house unwanted. He knew me, though, so I walked in. It was dark, unusually dark. Nate liked to keep a light or two on if he wasn't home, but there were none. So I assumed he was home, at least somewhere home. Nate, I called, looking around the house. Sofa, side table, lamp in the corner, a recliner chair in the other corner facing towards the TV. Dark books piled up on the coffee table in an erratic fashion. His house smelled sour. I walked into the kitchen, disgusted. On the island was a carcass. A rabbit, cut up in weird ways. Clumps of fur scattered on the counters. Strange symbols on the cupboards and fridge. Its legs bent back. It was still breathing. I covered my mouth with my hands and ran towards the back of the house, nearing the bedroom. Nate, there, lying in bed. Symbols drawn all over the walls, carved into the wooden bed frame. He lay with his hands folded like he was in a coffin. A photo of his daughter, Lila, sat on the dresser beside his bed. A red circle drawn around the frame. A lock of hair right in front. Candles burning to emit a smoking plume that caked the room. And around meow, that cat came out from underneath his bed. I left. I ran. I went straight home, into the bathroom, and locked the door. This was the time that Sebastian would be coming home from school. The bus should be dropping him off in front of the house right about now. I should have dinner cooked. I should be doing laundry. I should be setting the table. But I couldn't. I couldn't do that. He was dead. Nate was dead, and that cat was just there. She wasn't dead, but he was. What was going on? Mom? I found Layla outside. She said she wants to meet you. She said you saw her. How'd you see her? She knows where you are. That last sentence. Quiet. Soft. Calculated. What happened to my good boy? I didn't answer. How could I? Footsteps approached the door. I can hear him and the scratching at the door. It's been an hour. His little hands aching for his mother. Or their paws. Faint meows and begs heard from outside. Mom. Meow. Mom, please let me in. Meow. Please. Mommy. My face is tear-streaked and mascara runs down my cheeks. My phone in my hands, shaking. I'm writing this from a bathroom. The door is locked. I can't call anyone. There's no one to call. Just me and Seb. And that cat. Second story. Why don't go hunting anymore? Here's a recollection of the scariest experience I've ever witnessed. It all started some time ago, during the closing weekend of the Northern Zone rifle season in New York. The sun sets around 4:30, but it's already pitch black by 4 o'clock. I figured freezing my ass off wasn't worth another 15 minutes of hunting. I climbed down from the frigid tree stand, my back turned to the dark, silent forest. Normally, the walk back to the main road takes about 10 minutes, but it took me an hour. Whether it was the darkness, the cold, or sheer exhaustion, I lost my way. And, like a hungry lion, the forest seemed to swallow me whole. Stumbled through the mud-covered snow, my white knuckles growing even paler as my grip tightened around my rifle. The sounds around me were faint, the hostile wind whipping through the forest, the soft clink of my bullets in my pocket, until suddenly I heard it, a sound I'd never forget, a sound that still haunts me to this day, the cry of an infant, wailing, calling for a mother who wasn't there. I froze in my tracks, but only for a moment. Then I started walking faster, breaking into a light jog. The rational part of me insisted it was just some half-starved coyotes, scavenging for any scraps to ease their shriveled stomachs. But deep down, I knew that was the biggest load of bullshit on God's green earth. After running for 15 minutes, I stopped to catch my breath, gasping for air in the cold, icy wind. When I finally lifted my head, I realized just how complete the darkness around me was, my headlamp barely making a dent. My phone had never been great in the woods, but I'd always managed to get a signal when I needed it. This time, though, my phone wouldn't even turn on. Then, I heard something that shook me even more than the infant's cry, the voice of a woman, coming from deep within the woods. At first, it was a light, almost gleeful laugh, but then came words, chilling in their calmness. Hello, I see you. You know that, right? Her voice had a strange, twisted cheerfulness to it, like she was savoring my fear. If I hadn't been running before, I was certainly sprinting now. The forest around me seemed to come alive with an unsettling chorus of laughter, cries, and agony. The sounds of an unseen symphony wailed into the night, each note a twisted blend of every human emotion, harmonizing into a singular, horrifying sound of pure terror. Then it stopped. Silence closed in around me as I took in my surroundings, a clearing I didn't recognize, yet somehow felt familiar, like it had lived in a dream I couldn't quite recall. The clearing was barren, save for a stark white tree standing alone in the middle of the muddy landscape. Its twisted branches reached upward, as if grasping for an unseen place, a place not meant for human eyes. The tree was a grisly tangle of knotted branches, skeletal white bark, and an unsettling, silent aversion. I took a step closer, my hand reaching out, yearning for something that wasn't there. At the center of the tree, a crude drawing was carved, a rough outline of a human female, her form distorted and unnatural. Her hair ran down to the roots of the tree, disappearing underneath miles of bloody soil. Perhaps the most chilling detail of all was the X carved into her chest, right where her heart should have been. Jutting out from the X, right where the lines intersected, was a rusty nail driven deep into the tree's surface. Finally, my hand reached its destination. The head of the nail protruding from the bark, which released from the tree like a knife, slowly pulling free from a slab of meat. Then I snapped out of my trance, realizing the stream of crimson blood oozing from the tiny hole in the tree. As soon as it hit my mud-crusted boots, I heard it, a blood-curdling scream echoing from the woodline behind me. It didn't sound human, but it didn't quite sound like an animal either. I bolted through the forest, crashing into the godforsaken trees as I went. My frantic flight through the woods abruptly ended with just a few more steps. I stumbled out onto the dirt road, falling on my rifle as I tripped, finally reaching the path that led to my truck. I jumped into the cab, slammed the engine to life, and sped down the road. I never felt such relief in my life as I saw the familiar outline of my small house in the distance. Even now, 6 years later, I'm not ashamed to admit that I've never been hunting since, or even set foot in the woods, for that matter. But every once in a while, on a cold winter's night, I'll hear something in my yard, or sometimes even from behind my window. A voice I'll never forget, whispering something that haunts me to this day. Hello, I see you. You know that, right? Third story. My mother-in-law said St. Joseph would help us fix the problem. But then something far worse happened. That damn St. Joseph statue. Thinking back to it, and God knows I've had so many years to think back to it, it was the St. Joseph thing that changed my wife. It had to be my darling wife, Cecilia. So beautiful, with long black-brown hair with a hint of wave, parted straight down the middle, and intense black eyes. Our lovely daughter, Holly, now a precocious teen, looks like just her, the spitting image, except with bright blue eyes, just as intense. Holly was always so forward, walking and talking well before her age. She was only 5 when all of this happened. Only 5, about to start school, and my wife had her heart set on her getting into one particular good school. She couldn't stop talking about it, Holly's chances, how well we did at the interview, how it would set up Holly for life, a great university, great career. Cecilia, sweetheart, please stop. She's only 5. How can this affect her so much? I remember pleading with her. Her eyes flashed at me. How do you not understand? With Holly's talent, don't you care dash? I had never seen her so pressed before. She usually was a calm, gentle woman, qualities which had drawn me to her in the first place. But Holly's future schooling seemed to have awakened the mama bear in her. Then her mother came over with that statue. Bustling and chattering, she told Cecilia to calm down. St. Joseph would fix it all. I watched with disbelief as my mother-in-law took a little garden shovel, dug a hole right in our front lawn, in full view of the neighbors, placed the cheap-looking, unremarkable small statue in the hole, and covered it back up, leaving a mound of earth in our nice green lawn, which was my pride and joy. I turned to Cecilia, who to her credit looked somewhat abashed. What the hell? Your mother. Has she gone fully insane? Oh, darling, it's just an old Catholic thing. Don't let it bother you, dash, she said. Her mother came in, wiping her hands. There you go, my love. St. Joseph will sort you out and make sure little Holly goes where she's supposed to go. You'll stop fretting now, won't you? And she bent and kissed Cecilia on the forehead. I said nothing. This was the first time I became acutely aware of the Catholicism in my wife's family, placed on full display. Cecilia herself was not practicing. I never seen any Bibles or crosses around our place. Our wedding had been routine. As far as I remember, she showed up looking like a snow princess in a gorgeous white fluffy dress, and a priest married us in a church, and that was it. Once in a while her mother would say something Jesus why, and Cecilia would say, "Oh, Mom," and roll her eyes. I wouldn't get into it. I wasn't getting into it now. Shaking my head, I got up and went into the kitchen. We were having friends over for dinner that night, and I was responsible for the meat. The dinner went fantastically. Our food was amazing, as it always was in those days, Cecilia and I having a natural synergy together. The wine was flowing freely, until it wasn't. I grasped a bottle, and it was empty. I shook it futilely into my glass. A drop of red liquid trickled out. I turned with surprise to Cecilia, who seemed to find it hilarious and collapsed into wine-fused laughter. "Did you forget to pick up wine?" I said. "Darling, I thought you were stopping at the liquor store after dropping Holly off at her dance class." She rolled her eyes at Becca, our friend sitting next to her. "Can't trust men with anything, can you?" she exclaimed, mock-angry. "Here, give the bottle." She took the empty bottle from me and began pouring wine into my glass. I blinked. The bottle had been empty. I know it had been. I had had a glass or two. I'll freely admit it, but I know it was empty. "What are you on about? This bottle is more than half full." She waved it at Becca. "Want some?" And without waiting for an answer, she filled Becca's glass. A burst of raucous laughter of our guests distracted me. I sucked on the wine, a beautiful full-bodied red, and pushed down the fear and confusion inching into my heart. Becca and Cecilia were in some deep conversation. I stayed quiet. I can't remember if the bath thing was the next day or even the next week after the dinner party, but it can't have been much more than that. The school situation was being sorted out, and Cecilia seemed back to her calm, lovely self. Nothing was mentioned about St. Joseph anymore. It was early evening, and Cecilia had taken Holly for a bedtime bath. We had a really nice big tub in that house, and I could hear them splashing about. I was lounging in our bedroom, hoping Holly wouldn't be too difficult about bedtime. I idly swiped my phone, Holly's high-pitched voice going on about duckies and Cecilia singing, and I remember so clearly the full swell of love and joy for my wife and daughter brimming up in me. Then Holly's voice came through quite clearly. "Mommy, I want to do that. I want to stand on the foam." What is she talking about? I dropped the phone. Cecilia said something, much lower. "Me, Mommy." "Me too," cried Holly. I went to the bathroom. "Pull me up, Mommy." Holly was practically shrieking with excitement. I opened the door and went in. It was full of steam. Then the steam cleared, and I saw. Cecilia was standing on the foamy warm bath water. Fully naked, her wet hair jet black, streaming down her flushed pink-scarlet skin, she was standing upright. Her eyes were glowing at Holly, who was reaching up, frantically trying to stand with her, without success. I saw Cecilia's toes, the nails painted scarlet, poking through the sweet-smelling bath foam. "Daddy, I want to stand like Mommy," cried Holly. I was frozen. I couldn't move. Cecilia turned to me and smiled, gently lowering herself into the water. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Holly was talking too loudly, and her shrill voice seemed to pierce through my brain. I threw myself out of the bathroom and shut the door behind me. For some reason, I was panting hard. I knew I was feeling pure terror, like I never had before. My heart seemed to be jumping about, and I thought I was going to die. I didn't die. After a few seconds, I went to our bedroom and waited. Cecilia put Holly to bed and soon joined me. She smelled warm and wonderful, and part of me just wanted to pull her close and simply inhale her loveliness. But I had to say something. "No, you don't," she said. I gasped and looked at her desperately. She came close up to me and laid her finger on my lips. "You don't have to say anything. I love you, and you love me, and we both love Holly. That's all that matters. Come to bed." She took my hand and led me to bed. I still think of that night as the most amazing night I have ever had. I have never had any sexual experience before or since that even remotely compares. The next morning, I woke up groggily, my mind still clouded from the night before. I blinked, and when I closed my eyes, I saw an image of Cecilia, naked and wet, standing on bath foam, Holly reaching up to her. I opened my eyes. I could hear their voices from the garden. They were playing ball. I pulled on my dressing gown and went down to them. The sun was streaming in my eyes, and I was dazzled. I could make out Cecilia throwing the ball, Holly reaching out and missing it. The ball bounced on the grass, up over our low fence, and onto the street. Small children are so quick. As I walked up to them, shielding my eyes, Holly dashed like a mad rabbit, out of the gate which for some reason was left open. Holly, no. I heard Cecilia cry, and almost at the same instant, I heard the horrible shriek of brakes and a childish scream cut short. Cecilia and I stared at each other, held in a fear too great to describe. Then the paralysis broke free, and we both rushed into the street. Holly was lying on the ground, broken in a widening pool of blood under the front car wheels. The driver seemed paralyzed, sitting rigid behind the steering wheel, unmoving. Cecilia gave a terrible scream and threw herself on Holly's still, crooked body. People were gathering around, but I couldn't hear anything. It was as if big waves of silence were deafening me. The world seemed to settle on Cecilia and Holly. And then I saw it. Holly's foot, stretched out from beneath Cecilia's body, twitched. Slowly, Cecilia rose. Holly's eyelashes fluttered against her pale cheek, and then she opened them, bright blue, staring straight at her mother. "Mommy," she said and sat up unharmed. She turned to me. "Daddy." She lifted her arms to me. A gasp of relief rippled through the small crowd. I found myself breathing, almost laughing. I bent and picked up my daughter. And then I caught sight of the driver. He was staring straight at Cecilia. I will never forget that look. I still wake up from nightmares, remembering that terrible look as he lifted his foot from the brake, and then pressing hard again, this time down on the accelerator, turning the wheel towards Cecilia. Another cry went up. My voice, Cecilia's, the crowd, as the driver mowed her down mercilessly. We scattered back. I held Holly's face tightly against my chest, shielding her from seeing her mother's murder in broad daylight. Cecilia fell where Holly had been lying a few seconds ago. The impact seemed to shake the earth. The driver slammed the gear in reverse, running back over her body. I heard the crunch, and the mother and daughter's blood mingled on the gray street. I could hear a woman sobbing close to me. He will spend life in prison for what he did. To this day, he has no explanation other than saying that he realized Cecilia was unnatural and had to be killed before she caused any more damage. His defense brought in a psychologist who tried to argue that the trauma of thinking he had killed a little girl must have momentarily unbalanced him. He screamed that the girl was dead and should have remained dead. I left the courtroom and never returned. Better save my energy on being a good dad to Holly. I dug up the statue and gave it back to my poor mother-in-law. She was so overcome with grief that she didn't seem to notice. I didn't see much of her after Cecilia's death anyway. Our days passed quietly, Holly and I. I have never remarried. No one can compare with my darling Cecilia. One day, maybe I will be reunited with her. And until then, I will enjoy the company of my lovely daughter. Fourth story. The beckoning call of Black Hollow. I never should have taken that job. When I answered the email from Black Hollow Forestry, I figured it was just another remote surveying gig. A week alone in a deep, uncharted section of Appalachian wilderness, taking soil samples and marking potential logging zones. Easy money. I'd done it a dozen times before. But Black Hollow wasn't on any map. And by the time I realized that, I was already too far in to turn back. The helicopter dropped me off at the coordinates late in the afternoon. Just me, my pack, and my radio. The pilot, a wiry man with too many scars for someone who supposedly just flew transport, didn't even cut the engine as I stepped out. "You sure you want to do this?" he shouted over the roar of the blades. "Yeah, just a week of peace and quiet." He didn't laugh. Instead, he shoved a battered old compass into my hand. "Your GPS won't work past sundown," he said. "Use this to get out. And if you hear anything at night, don't answer it." Before I could ask what the hell he meant, he was gone. The first day was uneventful. The trees here were old, wrongly old. Some of them didn't match the native species found in Appalachia. Thick, moss-choked things with twisting black roots that looked more like veins than wood. The deeper I went, the stranger it got. I found bones in places where nothing larger than a squirrel should be. Elk skulls wedged between tree branches. Rib cages split open and picked clean, left sitting in the center of winding deer trails. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, my GPS flickered and died. I wasn't worried at first. I had the compass, and my tent was already set up. But that first night, as I lay in my sleeping bag, I heard something moving just beyond the tree line. Not walking, mimicking. A soft shuffling like bare feet against dead leaves, then silence. A second later, I heard my own voice whispering from the dark. "Hello." My stomach turned to ice. I stayed still, barely breathing. The voice repeated, slightly closer this time. "Hello." Exactly the same cadence, the same intonation, like a perfect recording. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to remain silent. My hand drifted toward my hatchet, the only weapon I had. The voice called out again, but I refused to answer. After what felt like hours, the footsteps retreated. The forest went back to its natural stillness. I didn't sleep. The next few days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion. The deeper I went, the worse the feeling of being watched became. At one point, I found my own boot prints in the mud, miles from where I'd been. On the fifth night, the whispers started again. But this time, it wasn't just my voice. It was my mother's, my father's, voices of people I knew, people who had no reason to be in the middle of nowhere calling to me in the dead of night. "Help me. It hurts. Please just come see." I clenched my teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, from just outside my tent, so close I could hear its breath, came a new voice. A harrowing one. "We see you." I broke camp before dawn, moving faster than I ever had before. I didn't care about the contract, about the samples. I just needed to leave. But the forest had changed. The trees were wrong, twisting at impossible angles. The sky never fully brightened, remaining a murky, overcast gray. The compass spun uselessly in my palm. The whispers continued, always just behind me. Then, around noon, I saw it. A clearing opened ahead, bathed in dim, stagnant light. In the center stood a figure. It was tall, too tall. Its limbs were elongated, its fingers tapering to needle-like points. Its head was wrong. An almost human face stretched over something that wasn't a skull. And it was smiling. Not with its mouth. Its entire face was smiling, skin shifting in ways that made my stomach churn. And then it spoke. Not aloud. Inside my head. "You are leaving." It wasn't a question. It was a command. I stumbled backward, nodding frantically. My feet barely touched the ground as I turned and ran. I didn't look back. The helicopter was already waiting for me at the extraction point. The pilot didn't say a word as I climbed in, breathless and shaking. We lifted off, the dense canopy swallowing the clearing below. Only then did I glance back. They were all there. Figures, dozens of them, standing in the shadows just beyond the trees. Watching, not chasing, not waving, just watching. The pilot must have seen them too, because he tightened his grip on the controls. As the forest shrank into the distance, he finally spoke. "You didn't answer them, did you?" I shook my head. He nodded, satisfied. "Good." Then, quieter. "They don't like it when you answer." I never went back. The paycheck was wired to my account a week later, but Black Hollow Forestry no longer existed. No website, no records, no proof that I had ever been hired. But I still have the compass. It doesn't point north anymore. And sometimes, in the dead of night, it spins. Fifth story. I think I saw a Wendigo through the train window. It is as the title states. I am fairly certain that I saw a Wendigo out the window of the train. If that were the only event that happened, then I wouldn't have any reason to tell my story. In order to get into what happened, let me start off at the beginning of my day. It was a normal Saturday, as far as I was concerned. I stayed up until about 3 a.m. playing the newest online mobile game with my brothers. Yes, I know. It is considered a sin to cheat by using my brother's screens to determine who the imposter is, but I'm not getting into that debate right now. I woke up not too long after 9 a.m., played on my phone a while, and then hopped out of bed, threw on the same clothes I had on the day before, and headed downstairs to the kitchen. I threw together my favorite breakfast food while my brothers both groggily dragged their feet to meet me. My twin brother, Gabe, decided to shower to wake himself up while my younger brother, Zach, decided to partake in the feast of homemade waffles with peanut butter and chocolate milk. By the time Gabe was dressed and sitting at the kitchen table, Zach and I had already finished putting the dishes into our dishwasher and cleaned off the table. I had packed in advance, and my train wasn't for a few more hours, so my brothers and I pulled our phones out and began terrorizing the servers of Among Us for a little while. After we grew tired from the online insults and cyberbullying that we received for cheating, we played some Mortal Kombat on our PS4. It was a very relaxing morning, all things considered. As I prepared to collect my luggage and leave for the train station, I reiterated the food plans to my siblings. The roast is in the slow cooker. All you'll have to do is clean up. It is going to be finished at 6 today, and if you aren't sure if it's done, then shoot me a picture. I continued speaking over my Gabe's attempts of assuring me that they'd be fine without me. Remember, tomorrow is oven-baked chicken fingers and fries. After school Monday is burgers, and you can order anything you want for Tuesday, and pay a tip. I rushed my sentence as Gabe held the front door of our tiny rented house open for me. Chrissy, we'll be fine, okay? Chill out, okay? Gabe chuckled to himself. You're right, you'll be fine. Do your homework. I love you guys. See you Wednesday. I called to them as I headed down the paved driveway and towards the bus stop down the road. Hasta la vista, baby. As Zach yelled my favorite movie reference of all time at me, I couldn't help but smile. He'll be fine. I raised him well, I thought to myself. I looked at them waving in the open front door and gave them a very flat and stern expression. I'll be back. I deepened my voice as best as possible before smiling and heading back towards the bus stop. My parents were extremely busy people all our lives. Gabe was born with a learning disability and required more attention from my parents than I needed. I had to grow up and mature faster to be able to take care of Gabe, as our mother was a full-time principal in our local school and a part-time student tutor, while my father worked as a warehouse manager full-time and was often working the midnight shifts. He worked those shifts due to the employees' reputations to be unproductive. He always said he needed to straighten them out. My father would sleep all day and my mother would work all day. I would always prepare Gabe's lunches and walk him to school, walk him home, and make him dinner. I help him with his homework. I read him bedtime stories. I tucked him to bed. I was always there for him. Zach was born a week before my 9th birthday with Gabe. By now, Gabe had quickly matured, surprising everyone. He was potentially even smarter and more socially acceptable than I was, though he didn't have the same parenting skills that I had developed, and therefore wasn't entirely confident in even turning on an oven or setting a microwave timer. Anyways, by the time Zach came around, I was well aware that I'd have to raise him too. I so desperately wanted my mom and dad to be real parents for little Zach, to be there for him and be what Gabe and I never had. But I knew deep down inside that that wouldn't happen. By the time I was Gabe and I were 18 and Zach had just turned 9, the three of us moved out and into our own apartment. I wasn't even sure that our parents would notice Zach's absence, to be honest. They had no issues with us all moving in together. They said to me themselves that they knew Zach was better off with us than them. They said he was never supposed to be, which entirely angered me. Because of this, Gabe and I started to call Zach our miracle brother. Despite our age gap, the three of us were extremely close with one another. It was us three against the world. Nobody would change that. Then about a year ago, I fell in love with my old high school crush. His name is Brian. We were always close friends since grade 9, but as high school came to a close and we parted ways for university, we confessed our love. It was a very corny movie moment to me. Even through long distance, we made our relationship work. Gabe and Zach were obviously jealous that Brian was taking all of my attention. They were afraid that Brian was going to take me away from them. All that aside, they liked my boyfriend. They were all friendly and had good laughs together. They were happy for us. So here I am, at the train station awaiting my train to my boyfriend on our first-year anniversary. I anxiously awaited the train, wondering with me when I got back. Maybe they were mad already, or maybe they aren't upset at all. I talked myself into thinking that I was doing the right thing, even though my stomach was turning violently. I was feeling very nauseous. It had nothing to do with anything I ate. I had a horrible feeling. Something inside me was telling me that something bad was going to happen. I didn't listen to it at the time. I thought it was all just the nerves of traveling. I was just too excited to see Brian. The train was quite long. It went from my small little town of southern Ontario to the northern and frigid climate that is stereotypically portrayed as all of Canada. Overall, the trip to Brian's apartments was close to 12 hours, however, that includes the train ride along with the bus and the drive that Brian has to take from his apartment to where I arrive on the train and back to his apartment. I had boarded the train and been seated when one of the train staff members asked to scan my ticket. I quickly apologized for not being prepared and dug through my luggage to find my ticket. After ensuring that I was settled and asking if I had wanted any food or drink for the ride, the staff member had moved along down the aisle. I looked around the car, noticing only 3 other passengers before pulling out my laptop from my bag and popping my headphones into my ears. I sent a text to my parents informing them of my absence from my hometown for the next few days and threw on some YouTube. Gaming channels were always a favorite, but recently Gabe had gotten me hooked onto a game theory channel. I could sit there for hours watching the different conspiracy theories about video game lore, and for the first half of my trip, that's exactly what I did. The early winter sunset filled the skies with orange and pink highlights as I had decided to put my laptop away and watch the window with my music playlist on. I had always enjoyed listening to music on long trips, especially across the country. I tried to imagine cheesy movie scenes taking place in the open fields with slow songs playing and faceless couples slow dancing. Within about an hour after I first peered out my window, the snow had begun. At first, it was a light flurry, hardly visible as the train sped along the tracks. Eventually, it was blizzarding. Simply looking outside gave me chills, as I never enjoyed being in the snow. Snow is pretty, but from afar, I'd always say. I shivered underneath my thick leather jacket as the train came to a slow stop in a remote northern town. This was not my stop, as the train station itself was visibly the largest building in the entire town. Anyone could stand on one end of the town and see the other side down the road, even in the blizzard-like conditions that were present. As the train waited, I kept my eyes focused outside my window. No passengers had left the car, and no additional passengers had boarded. I found this to be very strange, as the train needed to always stay on schedule. Little time was available for simply stopping. There must have been something wrong with one of the employees, or the conductor, or possibly even the train itself. Attention passengers, we apologize for the delay. We will continue on our trip in 5 minutes. Once again, we apologize for the delay. We thank you for choosing to ride with us and enjoy your evening. The overhead speakers broke through my thoughts and pulled me back into reality. I simply looked around the car for a moment and then texted Brian to let him know of the 5-minute delay. When I looked back outside my window again was when I saw it. The tall figure was hunched over and with its back towards me. I could see the back of its white skull and its antlers broken and distorted. It was extremely frail, its limbs impossibly long and spindly. The creature was in the tree line across the town. Hardly any specific details were noticeably through the extreme snow. However, I recognized right away the creature. Doubt had settled in almost as fast as the creature seemed to appear. Has it always been there? With my mind playing tricks on me, it became more and more obvious the longer I gawked at it. How had I not noticed it until now? What the hell? I whispered under my breath. At the moment, I was so quiet that I wasn't even sure I'd said it out loud. Just as soon as I questioned, the creature whirled its head at a near 180-degree angle to face me. The black pits for eyes stared deep into my soul. This creature had heard me, and now this creature had seen me. I was sure of it. Its mouth unhinged, and an animal's corpse fell out, blood spilling everywhere. Whatever this creature had been consuming was too mangled to determine what it really was. The train jolted to life and crawled across the tracks, gradually gaining speed. I was startled from the sudden movement and jumped nearly out of my seat. The creature only stared as I sped off. I scrambled to get my laptop out of my bag and reconnect it to the train's Wi-Fi. I spent the last 2.5 hours of my trip researching the creature. This is where I had learned of its name, Wendigo. This creature had been a part of native folklore for many generations. I nearly couldn't hold my dinner in when I read about the stories of cannibals becoming Wendigos hundreds of years ago. After reading other people's close encounters online, I was more and more convinced that what I saw was real. I was ready to move on and forget about my encounter with a Wendigo by the time I stepped off the train. I practically fell into Brian's arms and broke down, a mixture of fear and emotions of sadness and loneliness overtaking me all at once. I was grateful to be there with him, in his arms when I needed him most. I told him about my encounter with the cryptid on the drive back to his apartment. "I believe that you definitely saw something," he began, his doubt unintentionally present in his voice. "I just don't believe that a creature like that exists is all. Like, how come the only solid proof of its existence are tall tales and folklore?" "I don't know, Brian." I quietly looked at my feet. He reached one of his hands off the wheel and held mine firmly and reassuringly. I don't know what it is, I guess. It feels real to me." "Well, that's good enough for me," he said calmly. "That's enough reason for me to keep you safe." His classic, cute grin formed on his face, revealing only a few of his nearly perfect white teeth. "Oh, you need a reason to keep me safe?" I jokingly said, as if he had said something offensive. "Well, no. He stumbled over his words. Who? I made it comically clear that I was not believing him. Brian had managed to make me forget all about my terrible experience hours ago. We were laughing and joking around as he pulled into his parking space in his apartment complex. The building itself hadn't been very tall, only about 10 stories. The building itself was nearly completely surrounded by dark Canadian woods. His town wasn't very large, only about 8,000 residents. Beautiful, lush, evergreen forests surrounded the little city, with nearly every house having its own tree in the front lawn. Sparkling white snowflakes gently fell around me as I stepped out of Brian's car. The parking lot was lightly covered in snow before I had managed to make it to the entrance of the building. Brian, like the gentleman he is, carried my luggage from the car into the apartment. He was talking about one of the regular customers at his fast food part-time job when I cut him off. "Listen," I said in a hushed whisper. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Goosebumps formed all over my body. Someone was watching us. I could feel it. I scanned the tree line, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "I don't hear anything, Chris." "Exactly. It's so quiet. There weren't any noises around. Not a single sound. Only the eerie, dead silence." "Is it always this quiet? In the middle of the night?" "Yeah, it is." Brian wasn't making me feel any better. "What's wrong, Chrissy? You still spooked? Let's just go inside. I don't like it out here." I clung onto his arm and rushed towards the front doors. Once inside and in the elevator, I told him what I read online. I explained that the absence of any natural noises or wild animals typically means there's a predator around. With his apartment complex close to some dark woods, I wasn't very calm. I also told him how I felt that we were being watched from something in the woods. "Babe, your nerves are probably just shot." He held me close to him, trying to calm me down. "I promise you're safe here." "It's gone." "I promise." He drifted off. That night, I dreamed that the creature had followed us. I saw from its point of view as it followed our car towards Brian's apartment. I saw as it watched us get out from the car and head inside. And I saw as it crawled into bed behind me, holding me in place. "Don't move." It hissed its hot breath on my ear. I woke up in a cold sweat. Brian was sound asleep beside me, looking peaceful as ever. I went to the kitchen and got myself a glass of water. I put on my warm, fuzzy housecoat over top of my pajamas and stood outside on the balcony. Some fresh air would do me good, I thought to myself. It was 3:20 in the morning, and there I was on the balcony of the 7th floor, contemplating a cigarette. I wanted to quit ever since I had taken ownership of my brothers, but on that balcony, I felt as though I had so desperately needed one. Feeling ashamed of myself for even considering one, I threw the only cigarette I had off the balcony. I needed to get a hold of myself before I returned home. I couldn't let Zach see me like this. Gabe would scold me if he were here, I thought. Wiping tears off my face, I looked around the tree line. I was just starting to regain my composure when I noticed something out of place. In the tree line was the deer skull. The horrid creature's body was undoubtedly attached to it. It just stared at me. I whirled around and nearly dove inside Brian's apartment. I slammed the balcony glass door shut and locked it. As I headed to make sure the front door was locked, Brian intercepted me, forcing a scream out of me. "What's the matter?" "Christina." Brian held me by my arms. I wouldn't stop wailing. All that I could get out was, "It's following me," in between the sobs. He held me in a close hug until I was calm enough to explain my nightmare and about the creature I saw mere moments ago. "Stay here," he said as he headed towards the balcony and took a look outside. I watched as he unlocked the door and stepped onto the balcony. A chill went down my spine, but not because of the wintry night air flowing into the apartment. Brian just stood there, staring at one spot. After a long pause, he slowly backed into the apartment, not taking his eyes off the creature outside. I knew he saw it. I knew he believed me. I could see it in his face. His eyes wide with fear, his mouth only slightly ajar. Without looking at me, he said, "The parking lot is in the back of the complex. Get your things. We can't stay here. Are you crazy? That thing is outside. It's following me." I nearly yelled, panic setting in. I felt as though I was going to vomit. That thing. It told me. Brian was in terror. I don't know how, but it told me that it was going to come inside. I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "We have to go," he urged. I grabbed his hand, and he grabbed his keys, and we rushed out the front door. We ran to the elevator and rapidly hit the down button. I decided that taking the stairs was faster and bolted through the door towards the stairs, Brian following right behind me. Reaching the stairwell, I looked to the bottom before descending the stairs. About halfway down the first flight, I heard heavy tapping coming from the bottom. I leaned over the banister and saw the undead deer creature making its way up the stairs. Brian nearly bumped into me as I spun around and sprinted up the stairs crying and screaming. He followed my lead without question as I headed towards the elevator, doors just beginning to open. We both cramped ourselves into the elevator, and Brian rapidly pushed the ground floor button. Just as the double doors slowly closed, we saw the stairwell doorway open and the animal's snout making its way towards us. We held each other, Brian verbally praying and me regretting most of my past life's choices. Ground floor and parking. The elevator dinged, cueing us to make our hasty escape. We ran like our lives depended on it, because in those long moments they did. On our way to Brian's car, I slipped and fell into the snow. Brian, who was ahead of me, turned around and prepared to help me up. "No, go. Start the car. Go!" I yelled frantically as I slowly made my way to my feet. He spun around and ran towards the car again. I took one step forward and fell to my knees, pain pulsing through my ankle. I loudly groaned in pain, clenching my teeth. I managed to get to my feet and half limp, half jogged to the car. Just as I closed the passenger door, the front doors of the apartment complex were violently torn from their hinges. The creature held nothing back as it sprinted on all fours towards the car. "Hang on." Brian shifted the car into drive and floored it. Normally, the wintry road conditions would have evoked anxiety in me, but right now, I felt as though Brian wasn't driving fast enough. I kept my eyes glued to the rear view mirror, watching the creature gallop towards us, its skinny form seemingly moving in unnatural angles with each step. "Are you all right?" Brian asked of deep concern, his eyes trained on the road ahead. "I think that I broke my ankle." I managed to get out in between breaths. He cursed under his breath. "I don't think we can get you to a hospital with that thing on our asses," Brian thought out loud. "Did you bring your phone?" I asked him. "I'm going to call the police." "Damn it. No, I left mine at the apartment," Brian said plainly. I quietly sobbed as I too had left my phone in the rush. "We're going to die tonight, aren't we?" I said out loud, not wanting an answer. "No, babe, don't say that. Things are going to be fine. We'll make it out of this." "Will we?" We actually, Brian?" I yelled at him, tears streaming down his face too. He was terrified, just like me, and yet he was trying to protect me and keep me calm. I stumbled an apology in between sobs, but Brian cut me off. "It's gone." He slowed the car to a stop and looked all around. "Where did it go?" "It's gone. Where did it go?" I too began to look around, unease settling in. I'm not sure what was more horrific, seeing the creature pursue us or not being able to see it, but feel that it was still there. We sat there in the car for a long while, just looking around desperately. In the distance down the road, I noticed headlights. I pointed them out to Brian, and he flashed his high beams off and on. The car pulled over to the side of the road, and Brian got out to talk to the driver. I bit my lip, not enjoying the idea of Brian getting out of the car. "Please, call the police. We need an ambulance too." I heard Brian talk to the driver. Just as Brian made his way back to the car, the creature came out of the darkness and took him in its grasp. It happened so quickly. He was just gone, only a few drops of blood on the ground to prove that he was even there. The man in his car across the road screamed and sped off. I sat there, stunned and no doubt in shock. The monster rammed into my passenger side door head first, breaking me from my trance. It broke through the window and shoved its face towards me. I struggled against my seatbelt and repeatedly kicked it in its hollow skull. It caught my leg in its mouth and clamped its jaws down hard. I screamed from the pain, blood pooling around my wounds. I heard the horrific sound of my leg being bitten through as the beast crunched through bone. All I could do was scream. Biting down on my other leg, it pulled me through the window. I screamed for my life, but it was no use. With ease, it had flung me face first into a nearby tree, and everything went black instantly. My entire body seared with pain as blurry images of men and women in police uniforms and rescue uniforms loaded me onto a bed and into an ambulance. I was drifting in and out of consciousness. When I had finally come to full consciousness, I was in a hospital bed and hooked up to countless pieces of machinery. I had a feeding tube and an oxygen tube in me. My arm had 4 in it, heartbeat monitors attached to my chest. The nurse reading my file gasped when she saw me awake and rushed out of the room. The PA system announced several doctors to where I assumed I was located. Within minutes, the doctors were unhooking the feeding tube and oxygen tube, as I had no longer needed them. "We expected you to be in a coma for at least another month," one of the doctors explained to me after the tubes were removed. "Another month?" I asked before clearing my throat. It still felt as though I had those plastic tubes shoved down my throat. "You were out for 6 weeks. You were in a very brutal car accident. While waiting for the emergency vehicles to arrive, you were attacked by an animal. It was a very horrible scene." I blankly stared at him. "Don't you remember Christine?" He cocked his head to the side and gave me a quizzical look. It's Christina," I corrected him. "And no, I don't," I lied. I laid there for hours remembering the horrible nightmare that happened to me nearly 2 months ago. My whole body ached and pulsed with pain. I could hardly move. I thought about Brian for the longest time. I assumed he had to be dead, but he had shown up later that night. "I came as soon as I heard that you were awake," he told me as he leaned over and kissed my forehead. "After the creature had attacked me, it went for you. I watched as it threw you against the tree. I tried to pull it off you, but it threw me away. It told me that it wanted you. It told me that you saw something that you weren't supposed to see." Brian explained. By the time the police and ambulances showed up, the creature had already left. I never saw it leave. It was just somehow gone. I rode with you in the back. The officers recorded it as a bear attack. They didn't believe my story. Brian went on to say that he was administered into the hospital for a day with only flesh wounds and stitches. He said that he and my brothers and parents visited me nearly every day or so. "My parents came?" I asked, stunned. He nodded, giving me a half smile. "In fact, they gave me a call on my way here. They're headed up with your brothers. They said that they'll try to get here before breakfast. When they got the call that you were awake, they pretty much dropped what they were doing and hopped in the car." I teared up and smiled. "What did you tell them about what happened?" The police told them what they thought happened. I went with it because I want them to like me. I giggled. Then I struggled to sit up. Brian rushed over to give help and sit me up. I reached down to scratch my leg, but I couldn't quite find the spot. Hey, hun, can you help me? I've got an itch and I can't reach it. I'm too sore to be reaching down. I looked at Brian and he smiled back at me. Sure, babe, whereabouts? My left leg, just below the kneecap. Brian went pale suddenly. What's wrong? I removed the blankets as a wave of adrenaline washed over me. Both of my legs were gone from just above the knees. I was still coping with my new handicap when my younger brothers, accompanied by my parents, rushed into the room and nearly knocked the wind out of me in a big hug each. Guys, I'm okay. I'm all right. I laughed a little out loud from pure happiness. They said you might not wake up, Zach sobbed as he held me close. They were talking to Mom and Dad about having to pull the plug on you. Gabe said grimly. Oh, guys, doctors aren't always right. Look, I'm fine. Then I looked at my parents, both of them clearly holding back tears. We love you so much, Christina. Don't you ever go thinking otherwise. My mom's voice on the verge of breaking. Come back and live with us, okay? You'll be needing someone to look after you. My father chimed in. I'll have Gabe dash, I started. We've moved back in with Mom and Dad. Gabe said, giving me a warm smile. I looked over to Brian, who gave me a you should listen to them look with a smile to top it off. I'll come back home. When they let me out of here, I couldn't finish. I cried of happiness. My parents loved me after all. My parents embraced me in a hug each, and my dad stepped out of the room to talk to one of the nurses. How was the drive up? I asked my mom, wiping a tear from my face. Oh, not too bad. The first few hours there was a little snow, but once we passed through Oshawa, Toronto area, it wasn't too bad. Oh, nice, I trailed off. Oh, Chrissy. Zach grew excited. I saw something really cool on the drive up. Oh, that's right. Go on, tell your sister, my mom encouraged. It was a bear-looking creature, but it was wearing this animal skull. I think it was a deer's skull, and the bear looked real skinny and tall. Isn't that something? My mom looked at me. I just looked at Brian. I knew I was probably as pale as he was in that moment. I didn't see anything. Gabe stated matter-of-factly. I ignored him. It was freaky. Gabe missed it. I saw it too. I don't think your father saw it. My mother's voice grew distant as I stared at Brian. Are you okay? You don't look so good. Someone asked me, but I wasn't sure who. Maybe you all should go home early. I'll bring Chrissy back down when she's out of the hospital. Brian said, you all have lives to get back to. Oh, Brian, that's so sweet of you, but we'll pass. We've got a hotel room nearby, and we took the boys off school. My mom said in her fake cheery voice. Mom, I stated in the most serious tone I could muster up. Listen to me very carefully. You have seen something that you weren't meant to see. That thing, it's on its way right now. I teared up. It's coming to find you. And little Zachy. Sixth story. The creature in the woods. It was a crisp autumn evening when my friends and I decided to go camping in the remote woods for the weekend. We were all excited to escape the city and immerse ourselves in the tranquility of nature. By the time we arrived, night had already fallen, so we hurriedly set up our tents and lit a fire, the flickering flames casting long, dancing shadows around our campsite. As we sat around the fire, we began telling ghost stories, each one more chilling than the last. The crackling of the fire and the eerie shadows it created added to the spooky atmosphere. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and even the simplest of sounds seemed amplified in the stillness of the night. We roasted hot dogs for dinner, but the taste was overshadowed by the spine-tingling tales we shared. Around midnight, we decided to put out the fire and get ready to turn in for the night, eager to wake up early for a hike the next morning. Just as we were about to retreat to our separate tents, we heard a rustling noise coming from the bushes. Did you hear that? Henson asked, his voice tinged with unease. Yeah, I did. I replied, my heart beginning to race. Rabbit, Bruce retorted dismissively as he walked back to his tent. Henson and I stood there for a moment, scanning the trees, but saw nothing. Reluctantly, we turned and started walking back towards our tents. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed out of the forest, making every hair on my body stand on end. I spun around, but still saw nothing. That's when Bruce turned his flashlight on, and there, in the beam of light, I saw them. A pair of glowing eyes, staring back at us from the bushes, unblinking and menacing. My heart pounded as we heard the creature emerge from the shadows. "I'm grabbing my rifle," Bruce shouted as he ran towards his tent, but the creature let out a howl so deafening that it brought us all to our knees, wincing in pain. The sound seemed to pierce through the very fabric of the night, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. I slowly looked up, bracing myself to face the beast that I was certain would attack and kill us. It resembled a wolf, a gray wolf, but it was massive and stood on its hind legs. The creature was no shorter than 8 feet tall. I could see its huge fangs, with saliva glistening in the moonlight, dripping onto the ground. Its eyes burned with a feral intensity, and its fur bristled as it growled, sending shivers down my spine. The creature took a step closer, and that's when Bruce fired. He fired again and again, but then there was silence. I opened my eyes to see the creature still standing there, unscathed. It let out another bone-chilling howl before sprinting in our direction with terrifying speed. My friends and I aren't dumb. We took off running towards our trucks. My heart raced with fear as we ran, the creature's footsteps pounding the ground behind us, growing louder with each passing second. I could hear its breath, ragged and menacing, as it closed in on us. The pounding of my heart reverberated throughout my ears, almost drowning out the sounds of our frantic escape. I glanced back and saw it gaining on us with tremendous intensity. Its eyes glowed with malevolent hatred as it clawed its way towards us. In my panic, I stumbled and tripped over a tree root. Henson quickly turned around to help me up, and just as I could run again, I felt an intense burning sensation across my back. I cried out in agony, but didn't dare stop running, the creature's growls echoing in the darkness behind us. We finally reached our trucks. I fumbled with my keys, my hands uncontrollably shaking. I managed to get inside, slam my door shut, and lock it just as the creature lunged at my car. It pounded on my roof with such force that the entire vehicle shook, its growls and screams echoing through the night, sending chills down my spine. Then it jumped to the hood of my car, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. It started beating on my windshield, each blow causing cracks to spiderweb across the glass. I screamed as the creature's claws tore through the windshield, shards of glass flying everywhere. In a desperate move, I quickly unlocked my door and leaped out into the bed of Bruce's truck as he was pulling out. Bruce and Henson both sped away as fast as they could, tires screeching against the dirt. I stared in horror as the creature just stood there, still perched on the hood of my truck, its eyes locked onto mine. To this day, we don't know what that creature was. I know what I believe it is. We all agree on one thing. We'll never go camping in those woods again. The memory of that night still haunts me, and I can't shake the feeling that the creature is still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next unsuspecting victims. A few weeks later, I couldn't get the experience out of my mind, so I decided to do some research. I found old legends and folklore about the area, speaking of a beast that roamed the woods, a creature that was neither man nor animal. Locals called it the Wendigo, a spirit of the wilderness that preyed on those who ventured too deep into its territory. The stories described it as a cursed being transformed by its insatiable hunger and thirst for blood. I share my findings with my friends, and we all felt a shiver run down our spines. The descriptions matched what we had seen that night, down to the last horrifying detail. We realized how close we had come to becoming another story in the local folklore, another set of names whispered around campfires. The thought of that creature still lurking in the woods, waiting for its next prey, was too much to bear. We made a pact never to speak of that night again, hoping that by staying silent, we could somehow escape its grasp. The silence was our shield, a fragile barrier against the terror that stalked the shadows. But every now and then, when the wind howls through the trees, I can't help but remember those glowing eyes and the terror we felt. The Wendigo is still out there, somewhere in the dark, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it remembers us too. The thought sends a chill down my spine, making me question whether silence is enough to keep the darkness at bay. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.